So Craig, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we go into the future, can you tell us a little bit about your own backgrounds? Where did you grow up?
Sure, Nick. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure and an honor. I've been following you for a long time, and I think that the work that you're doing is truly remarkable. So thank you very much. In terms of my personal background, I was originally born and raised initially in the wonderful country which is now called Zimbabwe, but then Rhodesia. Yeah. Before moving with my mother to Melbourne in Australia, when they got divorced, only returned to Africa, but in this case South Africa, at the tender age of 14, and grew up on an Aberdeen Angus cattle farm in KwaZulu-Natal. So interesting start in my life, but I certainly feel Africa has been my home, hence the move away from Australia.
And you, I believe you grew up in the Midlands when you mentioned the cattle farm?
Yes, I had a great privilege of going to school at my class in the Midlands of KwaZulu-Natal. And then, as I said, my father and I lived together on an Aberdeen Angus cattle farm where we bred Angus cattle for the stud market here in South Africa.
And Craig, what was your dream career when you grew up?
I guess the fact that I was born and raised on a farm, I've always really wanted to become a farmer. Stressful, yes, but what career is not stressful? But the idea of having, I guess, soil under your feet, under the African sun is really appealing to me. But it was actually my father who convinced me that in order to become successful in farming, you really needed to learn about business, and pushed me towards obtaining a business qualification and going into business. But I'm really hoping that one day I will realize my dream and become a farmer. Maybe a farm in the Karoo would probably be quite suitable, Nick.
And so who inspired you in your early days?
Well, I tell you what, there's been many. I guess one always has to look back to your mother and father initially, of course. They effectively molded me and gave me the start in life that I probably needed, or certainly needed. My wife today, she constantly encourages me to become a better person and make a difference in those people around me. And then, of course, there's so many individuals whom I've followed over the years. Elon Musk, Richard Branson, I guess Barack Obama, and then closer to home, Adrian Gore from Discovery. I think what he's done in changing the face of banking and financial services in South Africa is remarkable. But there are so many people who've inspired me over the years, from professional athletes right the way to taxi drivers traveling in Uganda. I really try and take a lot from people, and as much as I possibly can from people.
And Craig, I believe you started your career at the VER. What attracted you to the financial services industry?
I think the financial services industry is broken. People talk about it's getting broken, or it's not a healthy environment. The interest of clients are not coming first. There's a massive trust deficit between advisors and businesses and business owners. So really, I wanted to go into a sector where I could truly make a difference. And I have one of my mottos is that I'd like to change the face of financial services on the continent of Africa. People require financial advisors more so now, as we've experienced coming and during COVID. People need solid advice, and I'm afraid there's not a lot of that going around at the moment. So I really want to try and make a difference in the lives of people, and the lives of families throughout Africa.
And in 2014, Craig, you started your own firm, Carrick Wealth. What was the impetus that propelled you to start your own business?
I guess the company that I was currently working for at that stage was going in a different direction to what I was really wanting to. So starting Carrick was, from a personal standpoint of view, not only the biggest challenge of my life, but it also has been the most rewarding. It started off with a simple idea, and to see what we've achieved in the last 5.5 years, it really is humbling. I wake up every day filled with gratitude, and I'm so thankful for the people who have played a significant role in this journey. But the journey is not over. You know, we have so much more that we still want to achieve, so many lives that we want to help and change. So it's certainly, as the saying goes, it's only just begun.
And Craig, what is your vision for Carrick going forward for the years to come?
So we currently manage about $500 million worth of private client assets. We'd like to get to $2 billion within the next 5 years. So by 2025, we'd like to have $2 billion under management. But more importantly, we want to have had a successful client base. We want to be able to have, as I said, make a difference in the lives of individuals, making sure that we're providing transparent and solid financial advice. We also, as a business, want to vertically integrate. So we want to have control of the process. We want to control the distribution. We want to control the asset management, and we want to control where the assets are held. And in this way, we believe that we're going to be able to offer a far better and a cheaper proposition for our customers. So in terms of a direct answer to the question, Nick, you know, where do we see ourselves? We just want to make a difference. We want to make a difference in the lives of individuals. We want to play a role in the very, very important financial planning and investment decisions that they have to take. We want to be able to give them sufficient information in order to be able to make those decisions. And I guess, you know, this can be summarized as we want to get financially married to our clients. We want to look after them and then the next generation and really create a legacy across the African continent.
Now, Craig, since you started Carrick 6 years ago, you've grown it into a serious player on the African continent. What would you say are your secrets to success?
Secrets to success. Wow. I guess there's quite a few. But let's think about the two big lessons that I've learned, which probably contribute to the success. Number one is know your weaknesses, and the converse of that is understand what your strengths are and play to your strengths. I don't believe in the terminology of people saying practice your weaknesses. I think that's rubbish. I think understand where your weaknesses are and just don't do your weaknesses and do more of your strengths, and then pay people to do the tasks of what your weaknesses are perceived to be. That would be number one. And number two, have patience. In the last certain 5.5 years of building Carrick and the last 20 years in the financial services industry, the biggest mistakes that I've ever made have probably come down to impatience. So the secret of success is, I would think, we truly do understand what our weaknesses are, and on the converse of that, we spend 95% of our time focusing on our strengths. And as a business and as a leader within the business, I really have learned patience and making sure that you apply patience to your business practice.
And Craig, looking back over your career, would you say there was a major turning point or maybe a number of turning points where things could have gone different?
Yeah, look, I ask myself that quite often and on a regular basis. You know, that whole old question of what if only, or why did I do that? And I guess you know, we all have to make mistakes, and we've made a lot, but we've learned from them. I guess the turning point is the decisions that we've made to build Carrick initially. That was obviously a great decision. But equally so, I guess the real turning point is the very fact that I've managed at Carrick to surround myself with some phenomenal people who are all far cleverer than me. It's one of the lessons that my father taught me a long time ago, going into business. Make sure you surround yourself with people cleverer than you. So I guess the biggest turning point for me is the leadership team that I've created. These people have the exact same amount of passion and desire for the business. They bought into the journey that we've plotted. They understand what the destination is, and they're fully committed. So I think once you've built up your leadership team, that will always become one of your greatest turning points in your business.
And Craig, I believe you're also actively involved in philanthropy, and you're the co-founder of the Signature of Hope Trust. Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement in philanthropy?
So again, Nick, I started Signature of Hope Trust some years back. In that I was very disillusioned. I've always given 20% of my income away. I believe that that's something that we should all be doing. Maybe it's not 20%, but we should be contributing. And I was always very unsure where that contribution was going. So I figured that if I started my own charity, I would be able to control that. Look, I'm certainly in a very fortunate position. I've had a lot of luck, and there's a lot of other people across the African continent who hasn't had the same amount of luck as I have. And therefore, I truly believe as a leader in the corporate environment, South African companies and African companies and worldwide companies need to be doing more. We need to be helping those who require it. We need to make sure that the assistance that we give is not just spray and pray. It's not just writing out a check. That's not what Signature of Hope is all about. Signature of Hope is all about empowering people to help themselves. And therefore, the projects that we get involved in need to be scalable. But more importantly, it focuses on empowerment, and therefore assisting people to empower themselves, empower those around them, the communities that they operate within. Then I think we're doing our bit, and we're giving back to society. So philanthropy is a very important part in both my life and the life of Carrick, and I'm pleased to say that many of the 150 people that are working with me at Carrick also support the same dream and same goal to give back to society, and this we do through Signature of Hope.
And Craig, what would you say is driving you today?
Nick, I've spoken about it quite often in the last, I guess, 10 minutes. I guess the biggest driving point for me is to make an impact in people's lives, and really thank the people who have partnered with me on this journey. I really want to change the face of financial services on the African continent, and I really want to be the best possible version for my three stakeholders: our clients, number one; my team members, number two; and obviously the shareholders of Carrick. So I really want to make a significant impact in the lives of the people around me.
Now, Craig, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
Sure. I guess leadership has changed so dramatically over the years. There's many books written about leadership. But I think the future of leadership comes down to four fundamental principles. The first of which is clarity. I think as a business and as a business leader and entrepreneur, we need to ensure we have greater clarity in what we do every day. We also need to ensure that we've communicated that clarity with all our stakeholders of the business. That would be number one. Number two, agile. I guess that this is the new buzzword in South Africa right now. We must remain agile. We have to have the agility to move and move quickly. And I think the COVID and the virus has actually taught us that. Number three, scalable. We need to create a long-term scalable proposition that's also sustainable. We need to understand what problem we're solving as a business. And as a business, we need to be creating scale and repeatability. In the next 5 to 10 years, Nick, I think businesses are going to need to require a greater volume of clients with less people, less cost, and less complexity. And therefore, scalability is going to be the key. I think smaller businesses are going to go out of business, and that's 100% certain. And then finally, and the most important factor in terms of future leadership, I think leaders need to remain humble. Don't be afraid to say, I'm sorry. Don't be afraid to say, I'm wrong. And therefore, certainly, as a leader, remain humble in your day-to-day actions.
Now, Craig, looking back over your own leadership journey, what would you say is most important for building future leaders? What should we do? What do we need to do to build the next generation of leaders?
I guess this comes down to mentorship, guidance. We spoke about patience earlier on. We need to identify the individuals who have talent. I believe you're born with talent. I don't think necessarily you can teach talent. So we need to identify individuals with talent. Those individuals need to be teachable, and therefore identifying an individual with talent is great, but if they're not teachable or they're not prepared to learn, then that becomes a problem. And then we need to try and teach those individuals that leadership is a serious proposition, and you're faced with, on a daily basis, challenges, and those challenges you have to constantly think under pressure. And then finally, whether it is teachable, I think it is. We need to make sure that we train the right individuals with the right attitude. Attitude, I think, is the key to any problem and to any successful business. If we have a look at all the successful leaders in business right now, you would all suggest that they have the right attitude, that attitude to succeed, that attitude to never give up, to pick themselves up when they're down, and to motivate people around them. So we've got to identify the talent for the future. We've got to make sure that that talent is teachable. We've got to make sure that those individuals can think coolly under pressure, and we've got to make sure that those individuals have the right attitude. Those would be the 4 things that I think future leaders, and identifying future leaders, is key.
Now, Craig, when you speak to aspiring leaders, what do you tell them about social media? How should they navigate social media to build their own leadership brands?
So, Nick, that's an interesting question, because you know, I'm a bit of a technical dinosaur, and was, like so many before me, didn't embrace social media, didn't believe in social media, and then only when I started realizing that I was getting left behind did I start researching into the power of social media and the importance of social media. An individual I follow quite aggressively is Gary Vaynerchuk. He said it a few years ago: if your marketing strategy is not centered around social media, then A, it's flawed, and B, you're going to go out of business. And I think that this is very, very true for personal branding and personal brand positioning. It's so vitally important that we need to have a greater volume of conversations as leaders. And in order to have this greater volume of conversations as a leader, we have to embrace social media, because that's the only method we can use to have larger volumes of conversations. I don't believe it's an excuse anymore to say, I don't understand social media, or even worse, I don't use social media. You have to embrace it. You have to embrace technology, and you need to position your brand via the various social media challenges.
And Craig, what is your advice for future leaders when it comes to challenges? what would you say are some of the biggest challenges future leaders should expect to encounter in their career?
Nick, I think that's a very, very good question. And I think the biggest challenge, interesting enough, is opportunities. Let me explain for the moment. In the next 3 to 5 years, and certainly beyond, I think that there's going to be an immense amount of opportunities that are going to come across leadership's desks and leadership's sight. And therefore, the biggest challenge that leaders are going to be faced is making sure that they choose the right opportunity. And when I talk about the right opportunity, I'm talking about the right opportunity that it is so good and it is so fail-proof that given the right amount of hard work, you're going to succeed. I guess you can compare it to surfing, although I've never actually been surfing, but you've got a surfer who sits on his board out in the ocean and he's watching these waves come through. And he's carefully watching and calculating and assessing the waves. And interesting enough, he usually leaves 6, 10, 15 waves go past before he actually chooses the wave to go for. And effectively what he does, he gets on his board and he paddles and he paddles and he paddles. So he's doing the hard work. He's putting in the hard work, but he's made the decision that this is the right wave for him. And it's the right wave because it's got enough volume, he's able to stand up and he's be able to stay up. And I guess that's the same thing with opportunities. You've got to make sure that you choose the right opportunity at the right time, and providing you just give it sufficient amount of effort and work, you're going to succeed. So I think the biggest challenge that leaders are going to be faced in the future is the word opportunity, making sure that you choose the right opportunity at the right time.
Now, Craig, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are some of the new skills you would want to factor in?
I guess the first thing is we need to, as a business and as a leadership, as leaders, we need to blend technology and people, not one or the other. We've got to make sure we've got both. As a leader, if you don't cross the digital divide, you're going to die. Think about this. The average American spends 5.5 hours per day on their phone. And therefore, as a business, if you're not on or in their phone constantly, daily, you're done, irrespective of whatever business you're in. So the first thing, the first skill set is making sure that you blend people and technology, not one or the other. You have to find the right blend. And secondly, as a business, we need to create a memorable, or what I often refer to as a euphoric client experience. Gone are the days that we can just rely on the benefits of the product or the product itself. Those days are gone. Clients are looking for a memorable experience. They're looking for a euphoric client experience. And if we compare it to a great restaurant, if we go to a great restaurant, we would expect the food to be good. And therefore, as a customer or as an owner of the restaurant, I would want my customers to first speak to me about the experience and the client experience that they've had over and above the food. And I guess that's the same thing in our industry, in financial services. I want clients to talk to me about the experience that they've had in dealing with Carrick opposed to the actual product. So in terms of a curriculum or new skills that I think future leaders need to adopt, one, we have to blend technology and people, and two, we need to make sure that we deliver a euphoric client experience.
Now, Craig, as a mentor to future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Yeah, I've actually got a very one here in Carrick, a young gentleman. he first came to work with me at the tender age of 23 years old. He was fresh out of university, bright lad, came from a great family, very intelligent, wanted to learn. And over the last 7 years of mentorship and guidance and joint collaboration and teamwork and lots of effort from him and I guess a fair amount of effort from me, the same gentleman at the age of 30 is Carrick's Group Operations Director. Most likely will be the Chief Operations Officer in the future, and I would say is set to take my position at some stage in the future. So here's a young man, 23 years old, dedicated, really wanted to climb the corporate ladder, really wanted to aspire to great things. I saw it in him a long time ago, and I spent a lot of time and a lot of effort with him. And here he is at the age of 30 as the Group Operations Director of a rather significant company. So yeah, I think that's one of the great stories that I can think of. But equally so, as leaders, we need to mentor more, we need to train more, we need to guide more, and we need to make sure that there are people to take over from us, because those are the people that will take the business to the next level.
And Craig, in your career, who are the role models of leadership that you came across, either in your career or your leadership journey, your learning journey, that you would recommend future leaders should study and learn from?
Wow, that's really a tough question, as there's so many. It's actually hard to choose. In fact, it would be unfair to choose. But if you force me, I would, at the top of my head, give you 5. The first one would be a gentleman called Robert Townsend, who built Avis in the 1960s and wrote a book, Up the Organization. Still regarded as one of the greatest books of all times, business books, leadership books. He would be the first. The second, Arianna Huffington, originally created the Huffington Post. She went against the corporate way of doing things and created a company called Thrive. I think she's got a lot of lessons to teach, and I really aspire to many of the lessons that she's advocated. Number 3, Colin Powell, the former US Secretary of State. He constantly speaks about that all plans are going to go out the window when the shooting starts, and there's many lessons in that in business. You can plan for war as best as possible, but when the shooting starts, all plans go out the window. I guess the same thing as business. You can strategize as best as possible, but when you're trying to execute, there's so many variables that can constantly change. So I think Colin has many lessons to teach. One can't not mention Jeff Bezos. He's going to become the first trillionaire, not billionaire, trillionaire, and therefore he's got to be doing something right from a leadership perspective. The other end of the continent, you've got Jack Ma. He's building a Chinese empire. So those would be 5. But then, as I'm speaking, I'm thinking, I guess the greatest leader of all times is our very own Nelson Mandela. I think he's shown what true leadership is all about, and what he's done, what he sacrificed, and how he mentored so many people. So, Nick, there are so many great leaders. You don't have to look hard. They don't have to be, in the limelight on the internet. They don't have to have created phenomenal companies. There's leadership lessons in sport. There's leadership lessons in every industry that we look at. So, but those would be the 5, if not 6, including the great Nelson Mandela.
Now, Craig, how can our listeners connect with you, and where should they follow you?
I guess LinkedIn is the obvious and natural, convenient portal that I guess we all use. So I would suggest LinkedIn would be a starting point. If you wanted more personal contact, my email address is Craig full stop Featherby at Carrick FS. That's CARRICK, F for Freddy, S for sugar.com. So I guess either LinkedIn or a direct email would be probably the best best way to connect.
And last but not least, Craig, is there one piece of advice that you would really like to convey to future leaders that they should look at and implement in their own leadership?
Sure. I guess there's many bits of leadership advice that I would impart. I guess it would start at, I think leaders need to truly understand that the role that they have to play when you step into a leadership position. I believe people fail in organizations for one of two reasons. The first of which is that they are potentially just natural failures, and therefore they probably shouldn't have been recruited, which is never really the case. And the second is that we fail them. And when I refer to we, I'm referring to the company's leadership team. These are the very people who have a role to play in the success or failure of individuals and teams. And you know, you can have a strong team but a poor leader, and you're likely to fail as an organization. But on the other hand, you can have a poor team but a strong leader, and there's a good chance of success. As leaders, I think you've got to be willing to do the hard work. You've got to be honest with yourself and those around you. And above all, you've got to have high ethics and conviction. And lastly, surround yourself with the most amazing people. Those people need to be cleverer than you. Those people need to support the journey that you've chosen. And those people need to have bought into the destination or the place that you're trying to get to. And that's exactly what I've successfully done at Carrick.
Well, Craig, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership and reminding us that it's a team that makes us, and that opportunity is possibly the biggest hurdle to cross in the years to come.
That's an absolute pleasure, Nick, and thank you very much. And I 100% agree with you. It is all about the team, building the right team. I often refer it to as the bus. Make sure you built the bus. Make sure you have the right people on the bus, and all make sure that you're going in the same direction. And then again, yes, opportunity. There's going to be lots of opportunities. Make sure you're choosing the right opportunity for your journey and for the bus and for your destination. And if you've got a great team, you've chosen the right opportunity, and you're prepared to do the hard work, then I think success is pretty much guaranteed.